First up at number 1, Hades 2 is the highly anticipated sequel that builds upon everything the original perfected and then some. Set deeper in the Greek underworld, players control Melinoe, a new protagonist with a completely different playstyle and a fresh cast of divine companions to interact with. The roguelite structure remains tight and satisfying, with each run feeling distinct thanks to the enormous variety of weapon types and boon combinations available. The narrative is woven seamlessly into gameplay as always, rewarding repeated attempts with new story revelations and character interactions. Combat is faster and more layered than the original, introducing new resource systems and surface mechanics that add strategic depth. The art direction is gorgeous, and the writing is consistently sharp. Even in early access, this already feels like a generation-defining dungeon crawler experience. Number 2 on the list is Darkest Dungeon 2, a sequel that takes the brutal, gothic horror of its predecessor and translates it into a road trip through a dying world. Instead of managing a hamlet, players now lead a party of flawed heroes across a coach journey through increasingly nightmarish regions. The stress and affliction systems return in refined form, pushing characters to their psychological limits in ways that create genuinely memorable moments. Combat is turn-based and deeply tactical, requiring careful party composition and resource management across each run. The art style has evolved beautifully, while keeping the bleak atmosphere that made the original so distinctive. Each character has expanded relationship dynamics that affect performance in combat. It is a more focused and refined experience that rewards patience and smart decision-making throughout. Coming in at 3, Dungeon Drafters is a stylish card-based dungeon crawler that combines deck-building mechanics with real-time tactical movement in a way that feels genuinely fresh. Players explore procedurally generated dungeons and collect cards representing spells and abilities, using them strategically in grid-based encounters. The visual design uses a clean pixel art style that is both readable and full of personality. Each class plays distinctly, and the card synergies available create a satisfying depth that reveals itself over many runs. Resource management between encounters adds a layer of tension that keeps every decision feeling meaningful. Boss encounters are creative and require adapting your deck strategy on the fly. It delivers excellent replayability and a satisfying loop from start to finish for genre fans. At number 4, Halls of Torment is a throwback action dungeon crawler that channels the feel of classic Diablo-era games through a modern lens. Players choose a hero and descend into increasingly dangerous underground halls filled with relentless waves of monsters and powerful bosses. The progression system involves unlocking new characters, abilities, and permanent upgrades that expand how each run can be approached. The isometric pixel art presentation is crisp and detailed, evoking strong nostalgia while remaining visually clear during chaotic combat. Ability combinations create powerful synergies that are satisfying to discover and optimize across multiple sessions. The pacing escalates well, and the difficulty curve feels fair but demanding. It punches well above its weight as an indie production and delivers a genuinely compelling dungeon crawling loop. Number 5 goes to Ravenswatch, a fast-paced action roguelite that draws its heroes and narrative from dark fairy tales and classic literature reimagined through a gothic horror lens. Players choose from characters like a reimagined Pied Piper or a dark take on Snow White, each with deeply distinct playstyles and ability kits. The game supports up to 4-player cooperative play, which significantly changes how encounters are approached and how abilities can be combined. Maps are procedurally generated and filled with secrets, optional encounters, and powerful items to discover. Combat is fluid and skill-expressive, rewarding aggressive play and positioning awareness. The visual style is striking and consistently atmospheric throughout every biome. It is one of the more inventive takes on the genre in terms of its thematic identity and mechanical variety. Coming in at 6, Children of Morta is a narrative-driven action dungeon crawler that follows the Berkson family as they defend their ancestral home against a growing corruption. Each family member plays completely differently, from the slow, powerful father to the agile youngest daughter, making character switching a core strategic element. The pixel art style is exceptional, with handcrafted environments that feel alive and full of detail despite the procedural structure. The story unfolds through narrative vignettes between runs, giving the roguelite loop genuine emotional weight. Passive upgrades affect the entire family, creating a satisfying sense of collective progression even when individual runs end badly. Boss encounters are memorable and well-designed. The cooperative mode allows 2 players to experience the story together, adding further replay value. Number 7 features Ember Knights, a polished cooperative action roguelite that pits players against the forces of a corrupted sorcerer across procedurally generated worlds filled with diverse enemies. Up to 4 players can team up and combine ability kits to create powerful synergistic builds across each run. The combat is smooth and responsive, using a twin-stick-inspired system that rewards dodging and skillful positioning. Runes collected during runs modify and enhance abilities in increasingly dramatic ways, creating builds that feel powerful and expressive. The visual design is clean and colorful, making it easy to read chaotic multiplayer encounters clearly. Each world has distinct environmental themes and enemy types that keep the experience feeling fresh across sessions. It is a crowd-pleasing dungeon crawler that excels in cooperative settings especially. At number 8, Curse of the Dead Gods is a brutally atmospheric action roguelite set inside a cursed temple filled with traps, ancient guardians, and a corruption system that punishes greed and recklessness. Players must manage a corruption meter that accumulates as they gather gold and take damage, eventually triggering curses that permanently modify the run in dangerous ways. The combat uses a stamina-based system that rewards timing, parrying, and deliberate weapon switching rather than frantic button mashing. The 3-weapon slot system encourages creative loadout combinations, with each weapon type feeling distinct in use. The visual presentation is dark and oppressive, using flickering torchlight and shadow effects to build atmosphere throughout. Boss encounters demand patience and pattern recognition. It is mechanically tight and consistently rewarding for players willing to engage with its systems deeply. Number 9 brings Wayfinder into the list, an action RPG dungeon crawler with a strong emphasis on character building, cooperative play, and narrative progression through a world fractured by a catastrophic event called the Gloom. Players choose from a roster of distinct heroes, each with their own weapon preferences and ability kits, then venture into procedurally influenced dungeons called Echoes to gather resources and uncover lore. The combat is fast and fluid, with satisfying feedback on every hit, and a deep skill customization system that rewards experimentation. Crafting and gear progression give long-term goals that keep runs feeling purposeful beyond the immediate dungeon objective. The social hub area lets players interact between missions and shows the collaborative world-building angle of the design. It is a generous and expansive experience with consistent content updates. Coming to number 10, Delver is a classic first-person dungeon crawler roguelite that embraces old-school design principles with modern quality-of-life refinements baked throughout. Players descend through procedurally generated pixelated dungeons, collecting weapons, artifacts, and spells, while managing limited health and resources carefully. The first-person perspective gives encounters an immediacy that top-down dungeon crawlers cannot replicate, making every corner turn feel genuinely tense. Item variety is impressive, with hundreds of weapons and magical artifacts offering wildly different gameplay possibilities in each run. The tone is light and slightly whimsical, despite the challenging difficulty, making failures feel instructive rather than punishing. It is a compact and polished experience that respects the player's time and intelligence, a solid choice for fans of immersive first-person dungeon exploration. At number 11, Tangledeep is a deeply systems-rich dungeon crawler RPG that draws inspiration from classic SNES-era JRPGs while building a genuinely complex modern roguelite on top of that foundation. Players choose from multiple job classes that can be combined and hybridized as the game progresses, creating deeply personalized character builds across each run. The pixel art is charming, and the world building is surprisingly detailed for a genre where narrative is often minimal. Turn-based combat rewards strategic thinking and careful resource management at every level of the dungeon. A farming and town-building site system gives meaningful activities between dungeon runs. Accessibility options are thoughtful and allow players to tune the challenge to their preference. It is an exceptionally deep experience that rewards long-term investment and genuine engagement with its extensive systems. Number 12 is Stoneshard, an uncompromising open-world RPG roguelite that simulates survival, injury, and medical management alongside traditional dungeon crawling in remarkable detail. Players manage not just health and mana, but specific body part injuries, psychological conditions, hunger, thirst, and addiction, creating a simulation layer that sets it apart completely from genre contemporaries. Tactical turn-based combat punishes aggression and rewards preparation, positioning, and careful use of skills and consumables. The open-world structure allows players to explore towns, take contracts, and approach the dungeon at their own pace, rather than following a linear descent. Character builds are deep and varied, with multiple skill trees that create meaningfully different playstyles. It is genuinely demanding, but rewards patience and careful play with a deeply satisfying sense of mastery over time. Moving to 13. Labyrinth of Galleria is a dungeon-crawling RPG from Nippon Ichi Software that sends players deep into a magical underground labyrinth beneath a mansion, managing large parties of puppet soldiers guided by a witch and her apprentice. The party system allows for enormous squad sizes compared to typical dungeon crawlers, creating a unique tactical layer where formation and role assignment matter enormously. The narrative is darker and more mature than the colorful presentation suggests, with genuinely surprising story turns as the descent progresses. Map exploration is grid-based and methodical, rewarding thorough investigation of every corridor and room. The loop of strengthening your puppet core and pushing deeper into new labyrinth sections is consistently satisfying. Boss encounters are creative and require adapting party compositions strategically. It is a standout entry in the classic dungeon RPG tradition. At 14, Demeo is a tabletop-inspired dungeon crawler designed for virtual reality, but also fully playable on flat screen, delivering a cooperative board game experience translated brilliantly into digital form. Up to 4 players gather around a miniature dungeon board and take turns moving hero pieces, drawing ability cards, and battling monsters across beautifully detailed 3-dimensional maps. The presentation captures the magic of sitting around a physical game table with friends in a way that feels genuinely charming rather than gimmicky. Each hero class plays distinctly, and the card draw system introduces satisfying randomness that keeps each session unpredictable. Multiple campaign chapters provide hours of content, with escalating difficulty and enemy variety. The cooperative design encourages communication and shared strategy naturally. It is one of the most delightful and creative takes on the dungeon crawler genre available today. Number 15 features Soulstone Survivors, an action roguelite that blends the bullet heaven genre with deep dungeon crawler progression systems to create something fast, chaotic, and deeply satisfying. Players choose from a roster of distinct classes and battle enormous waves of monsters and colossal bosses across procedurally structured arenas. The ability selection system during runs allows for increasingly absurd and powerful combinations that scale dramatically as each session progresses. Permanent progression unlocks new skills, passive bonuses, and character options that make each subsequent run feel more empowered and varied. The visual feedback during peak combat intensity is spectacular, filling the screen with projectiles and explosions in a way that remains readable. Boss encounters are massive and memorable. It delivers one of the most purely enjoyable gameplay loops in the modern action dungeon crawler space. Coming to 16, Hammerwatch 2 expands the beloved action dungeon crawler formula into a fully open-world structure while preserving the tight top-down combat that made the original a fan favorite. Players explore an expansive island filled with towns, wilderness areas, and underground dungeons packed with enemies, secrets, and loot. Up to 4 players can adventure cooperatively across the entire campaign, which significantly enriches the experience through shared discovery and combined combat tower. The class system offers meaningful variety, and the skill trees allow for personalized builds across multiple playthroughs. The pixel art is detailed and expressive, bringing the world to life with strong visual identity. Quest variety keeps the open-world exploration feeling purposeful rather than repetitive. It is a generous and satisfying sequel that rewards both solo and cooperative play equally well. Number 17 brings Iratus, Lord of the Dead, a reverse dungeon crawler where players take control of a powerful necromancer commanding an army of undead minions, assembled from the body parts of defeated heroes. The turn-based combat system requires building effective undead compositions and managing the sanity of enemy heroes to wear them down psychologically as well as physically. Permanent upgrade systems for both the necromancer and his minion types give satisfying long-term progression across campaign runs. The challenge is considerable, and the game makes no apologies for punishing careless play or poor tactical decisions. The gothic visual design is striking, and the dark humor woven throughout the writing gives the experience real personality. It is a creative genre inversion that executes its concept with confidence and mechanical depth, a genuinely fresh take on dungeon crawler conventions worth experiencing. At 18, Grim Dawn is an action RPG dungeon crawler set in a brutal, dark fantasy world ravaged by two otherworldly factions fighting over humanity as a resource. The dual-class system allows players to combine any two of the available masteries into deeply personalized builds with enormous variety and replayability across hundreds of hours. Loot density is exceptional, and item variety is staggering, consistently rewarding exploration and enemy slaughter with meaningful gear upgrades. The world is handcrafted rather than procedurally generated, giving it a sense of permanence in detail that makes exploration feel genuinely worthwhile. Faction systems add political depth to the world building and offer meaningful gameplay bonuses. Expansion content significantly extends the already substantial base campaign. It remains one of the finest action RPG dungeon crawlers available on Steam and holds up brilliantly against newer genre entries. Number 19 features Torchlight Infinite, a free-to-play action dungeon crawler that delivers the frantic, loot-driven gameplay the franchise is known for, with modern life service polish and generous monetization compared to many competitors. Players choose from a roster of heroes with distinct identities and build toward powerful endgame configurations through layered skill and gear systems. The seasonal content model keeps the game regularly refreshed with new mechanics, league modifiers, and progression systems that reward returning players. Enemy density and combat pacing are tuned for satisfying action, with screen-clearing ability combinations rewarding deep build investment. The endgame is extensive and offers genuine challenge for players seeking to optimize their characters further. Visual design is colorful and detailed, making environments and enemy types feel distinct across each world. It is an accessible and rewarding dungeon crawler for all experience levels. Coming to 20, Last Epoch is an action RPG dungeon crawler with an exceptional skill customization system that lets players craft builds with a level of granularity rarely seen in the genre. The timeline-jumping narrative sends players across different eras of a dying world, giving each act a distinct visual and thematic identity. The passive tree is deep, but organized in a way that remains navigable compared to more overwhelming genre contemporaries. Crafting in Last Epoch is transparent and deterministic, giving players genuine agency over gear progression, rather than relying purely on random drops. Endgame systems, including the Monolith of Fate, offer hundreds of hours of content beyond the campaign. Multiplayer support allows cooperative play across the full experience. It is an ambitious and well-executed dungeon crawler RPG that rewards investment with genuine mastery over its deep and rewarding systems. Number 21 goes to Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader, a classic computer RPG dungeon crawler set in the grim-dark far future that puts players in command of a rogue trader dynasty navigating dangerous space and underground installations filled with heresy and Xenos threats. The isometric turn-based combat draws from classic CRPG traditions while incorporating the complex systems of the tabletop source material with impressive faithfulness. Companion characters are richly written and respond dynamically to player choices throughout the branching narrative. Character builds draw from the deep Warhammer 40k lore, allowing players to create psychers, warriors, and tech priests with meaningfully distinct capabilities. The environments range from sprawling space hulks to frontier worlds, all rendered with impressive detail and atmosphere. It is a love letter to the source material and a confident dungeon crawler RPG in its own right. At number 22, Moonring is a free-to-play open-world dungeon crawler RPG that draws direct inspiration from Ultima and classic computer RPGs of the 1980s, while building something that feels remarkably fresh and modern in its execution. Players explore a handcrafted world of 12 moons, each with distinct cultures, factions, and underground dungeons to descend through. The design philosophy prioritizes player freedom and genuine world simulation over guided quest markers and handholding. Factions respond dynamically to player actions, creating a reactive world that feels alive across long play sessions. The dungeon design is intricate and rewards burrow exploration and map-making. Combat is tactical and draws from classic turn-based RPG traditions. Given that it is free to play with no monetization, it represents extraordinary value for fans of deep, old-school dungeon crawling design done right. Number 23 features Caves of Quad, a science fantasy roguelike dungeon crawler with extraordinary depth that simulates an entire civilization built on the ruins of a collapsed technological society.
Character creation allows for wildly creative combinations of mutations and skills, letting players build everything from telepathic plant hybrids to cybernetically enhanced wanderers. The procedurally generated world includes history, factions, languages, and ruins, all of which interact with each other and with the player in meaningful ways. Dungeon generation is intricate and rewards patience and curiosity with remarkable discoveries. The writing throughout is exceptional, blending dark humor with genuine lore depth in a way that makes every document and NPC interaction worth reading. It is demanding, but extraordinarily rewarding for players willing to embrace its complexity. One of the most ambitious dungeon crawlers available anywhere. Closing out the list at number 25, Synthetik 2 is a top-down shooter dungeon crawler hybrid that delivers some of the most mechanically satisfying gunplay in the genre through a deeply simulated weapon handling system. Every firearm has specific reload mechanics that must be executed manually, creating a skill ceiling that rewards practice and precision under pressure. The cooperative mode allows two players to tackle the brutal, procedurally generated facility together, combining different android classes and weapon loadouts for synergistic effect. Enemy AI is aggressive and varied, adapting to player positioning and forcing constant tactical repositioning throughout encounters. The upgrade and build variety across multiple runs is substantial, with hundreds of items and modifications creating wildly different session experiences. The challenge is high, but the feedback from mastering the mechanics is genuinely exceptional, a uniquely demanding and rewarding way to close this list.